So a little bit about Just Data practice, which we have been implementing all week. And then why do we do this? And just a few words about how we approach this subject. So first, some fantastic photographs from this week, so we can see how we go about it. As I mentioned, it's about knowledge exchange. We start with wonderful presentations. This is a photograph, I believe, from yesterday, where we gathered the health data ecosystems from various parts of Sweden and have some guest speakers from abroad. People who have never exchanged about their health programs. I can see that our colleague from AstraZeneca is still with us today. It's a great pleasure to have you. That's Sara Nuzuhuri, who you see in the middle here. This is, of course, a lively discussion, and it's a very free discussion. We don't have one of those stiff programs where you're not allowed to intervene. You have already witnessed this. It's very important to have those dialogues. We also are very much hands-on. So in parallel to the discussions we've had and hands-on track where people have gone out to interact with the environment, collect data, think about how they're collecting data, what the process is, and see if they can actually think about it in terms of just data. And you can see that there are various experiments being conducted, and these are most of these people are back here in that room over there. This is why not everybody is in this room with us. And they are actually currently completing prototypes and experiments where they will demonstrate tomorrow in the public showcase their interactions with data and AI-driven systems. And this is the work that's happening in the back room. So this is just so that you get a flavor of what is happening in this building. We're very lucky to have a wonderful building that allows us to break into these spaces. And tomorrow there will be, this was a rehearsal for tomorrow. There will be on stage and also installations and some very special appearances, and of course the award ceremony as well. So this is to give you an idea of how we're going in practice about it and implementing throughout all of these various different activities. We are thinking about implementing just data practice. How do we do it? What are the methodologies? Now, why just data? Very simply, these labs follow the Just Health data labs that we ran at GoCo Health Innovation City in Gothenburg in June, where we worked with the health sector in particular. And we did some very simple exercises. We asked large language models, large multimedia models, to draw a picture of a man and a woman where the woman is taller than the man. Could not do it, no matter how many times we tried. This is one of the attempts. It's actually created a 5-meter man or something, and it says Momen. Momen. Momen? In the end, we forced it somehow to draw a woman that was taller than the man. I mean, someone here from the Netherlands who's extremely... No, well, you live in the Netherlands, you're extremely tall. Florence. Yeah. And you must feel really funny when you see this, right? So basically, in the end, it drew a picture, but the woman was drawn as a cartoon giant, like something out of Disney movies. We could not make it. It's inherited such a strong prejudice from the internet data that it's regurgitated, that basically it does injustice to millions of people on the planet immediately. And if we are having that problem, what is going to happen to our health system when it tries to rely on trained systems? So that was a very, very much a sort of wake-up moment. And I want to remind you why we do this. This is a very famous use case. It has done the rounds. Many of you will know it. Many of you were there even. This is a woman whom we've put at the center of our prototyping in Slush in Helsinki a few years back. She's very proud to be a blind singer and vocal coach from the Sibelius Academy. And our neurofeedback team fitted her with neurofeedback sensors that are used in clinical trials for people with anxiety attacks. In clinical trials, they visualize the brain activity that's collected through the neurofeedback sensor to alert the person to the moments when their brain activity is changing and may indicate an onslaught of an anxiety attack. So if they can recognize it early, they can start to train to control it. That's the principle. Except that in this case, in order to test how we interact with systems, how we can drive systems, they turned it into a musical scale. And so the person who was using the neurofeedback sensor could start to train to control musical scale directly from their brain. So rather than collecting data from a person, this is a person taking over the system. It's very different. And then everybody in the lab, there were 30 people from very different backgrounds, much like you. And they all tried to use it, and it took them around 2 hours to be able to go up and down the musical scale directly from their brain, which is remarkable in itself, because it shows how plastic we are as human beings, how we can train ourselves. However, when our vocal coach and blind singer put the neurofeedback sensor on, she was able to play instantly. And then the neurofeedback team said they had never seen anything like it before, and everybody else suddenly, it dawned on them that the person who in the mechanical era, because of how we designed the world, was considered less able-bodied, was now far more able than the rest of us. And I repeat this story over and over again because I want you to remember that the way that we design the world, this is what defines what someone can or cannot do. And how we put labels on people then is really our fault. If we have to label someone as less able-bodied, it's only our fault because we haven't designed it properly. And I also want you to remember that before there was a pianist, before the invention of a piano, there was no such thing as a pianist virtuoso. And it turned out that Rika Hänninen, that's her name, is a virtuoso with brain-computer interfaces. And we need to discover those virtuosities because they influence our future of work. So this is why we do this. If we are going to design AI-driven systems correctly, then what we want to do is create systems that are accounting for, yes, we need to talk to each other, so we need interoperability. This is a technical matter. It's been handled through lots of projects that we work on. We need systems of agreements to be embedded. We need to have some of the parameters that regulate our society. We need systems of resilience where we need to embed systems that monitor our sustainability. We need systems of responsibility. We just heard about responsible AI, data ethics. And all of these sit on top of our systems of beliefs. And if our societal and cultural values, you think this is abstract, it's not. This is absolutely to be embedded in digital systems. And this is that if our values dictate that we are inclusive as a matter of principle, and that we will mitigate against biases. Biases are, by the way, useful if they are correctly implemented. So it's not a dirty word. It's dirty word if it's used wrongly. It's always the same. It's if we are ignorant, if we are not well informed, if we are not documenting enough or referencing the correct reference points, then there are serious consequences. We need to embed systems that can manage the biases in the correct way that reflect our values as a society. So this is embedded in our system. So this is in the Industry Commons, which is the research organization that I run. And we have a small team of 6 researchers. We are able to build this stack and through different projects. So basically we started with that one because that was the one that was most recognized as being needed by funding programs. But we have progressed. We are building those in another project, and then just was something that was missing. This bottom layer was considered to be quite challenging, and some of the things like resilience, for example, there's a resilience ontology that's being built now as a result of some of our activities in that project. And then we can build breakthrough innovation and all of the things that we have great ambitions to advance on, based on solid foundations. So hence, just very quickly, It came from a study that we were commissioned to do for the European Open Science Cloud. We're now involved in big projects with the European Science Cloud that will create an innovation center for the European Open Science Cloud, and hope to see more of you involved with that. It came as a discussion with 43 interviews with industry, actually, as much needed as a counterpoint to FAIR data. You will all be aware of FAIR data if you're following research. Because FAIR data, of course, is looking at the technological connections, and we are now looking at human responsibility to match that. It was embedded in your recommendations for AI, for ontologies and knowledge graphs. It was embedded in the white paper for open digitizing European industry, with an interesting use case that is from clinical studies. We finally said, okay, it's fine that it's all in recommendations, but we need to implement this. So we proposed to Vinnova that we wanted to implement it for industry, and it's funded by the Avancerad Digitalisering program, which is of course a co-funding between Vinnova and big companies. And it's not a metric. So of course now I'm talking about it in the context of the digitizing or digital systems for the new European Bauhaus community. So this has been onboarded by the DGNEP project because it's a very important component of what the new European Bauhaus community really needs to safeguard in terms of digital technologies. So it's important then that some of the values that we have established in the European Bauhaus are also reflected. It's not a metric. We do not measure human responsibility in numbers. It's not mechanistic, it's not deterministic, it's not hierarchical. So it's not, it doesn't belong to those kinds of methods, but instead it's intended as a set of guidelines for data literacy about bias-sensitive data, the context of data collection and data provenance. Then there are methodologies, there are tools that we agree on, and there's also annotation and practice that we agree on. It's about meanings, and meanings, of course, are socially negotiated, which is very important to remember. And this is where diversity is extremely important, because we would like to have our systems work across a broad spectrum of population. And of course, for those who are interested in markets, that directly impacts to your ability to reach a wider market. It's about justice. So this is a wonderful thing from MEDA about what is equality, what is equity, and what is actually justice. We need to straighten the tree. It's dynamic, so it's not like we're trying to create a snapshot in one point in time that's not going to be applicable later, or it's going to malfunction later. So we are going from systemic approaches to ecosystemic approaches. We are going from individual expertise to cross-domain collaboration. We need to align between us on this. We are going from creating individual assets to creating enablers. This is dynamic. This is about enabling people to perform. And from codes of conduct, which are usually static sets, to incentives, because we want to influence behavior in positive ways. And I will just end on this. Well, no, I'm not going to end on this. I'm going to end on the next one. But knowledge about the data is always more valuable than the data itself. You've heard this several times this week. Fredrik Verhelst, who's on here. So Olivier from Airbus and Fredrik from Total Energies came up simultaneously with this statement when I said we were opening the Knowledge Graph Alliance in Brussels, an international organization, and I was saying that maybe sometimes knowledge about the data is more valuable than the data itself, and they both said no, not sometimes, always. And so Fredrik has been with us for four days this week. Yesterday also contributed to comparisons between his sector and the health sector, and which was very interesting. Basically, we're very lucky to have people who have such vision, because this is very, very important vision to then be able to execute on. But it's about these people ultimately. These are some of our community, and I don't know if Andrea, who took those photographs, beautiful photographs, is over in that room. He says, "I'm not a photographer." He is an engineer, but they are beautiful photographs of some of our community, and they are highly diverse, and this is what makes things happen. This is why we do things. So on that note, we're going to get ourselves set up for a wonderful panel where we will look at just living environments, particularly relevant for the European Bauhaus and the DigiNeb initiative. So thank you, everyone.